Welcome to Your Money, Your Life, our personal finance podcast focused on improving your life through financial wellness, brought to you by Black Enterprise Digital. I'm your host, Alfred Edmond Jr. On each episode of Your Money, Your Life, we address the topics and issues you deal with every day as you strive to make the most of your money and the best of your life. By discussions and insights with the top experts on everything from decoding your financial behavior and achieving financial freedom to conquering debt and creating a legacy of multi-generational wealth. We're going to share critical advice about talking money before committing to love, and specifically before committing financially intimate acts such as marriage or cohabitation. And we have the perfect guest for this conversation. We're going to talk to Lynnette Khalfani-Cox, also known as the Money Coach. She's a speaker, she's an author, best-selling author, classic book, Zero Debt, which is my favorite book, even though I know you've written so many since then. And we're going to really get into the conversations you need to have before you make that big move. Welcome to the show, Lynnette.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So before we get into the conversation, what's going on in your financial life? What's happening with the Money Coach right now?
Well, on the personal level, we're paying for college, so that's always a huge financial outlay. We have a daughter who just graduated from college, as well as a son who's now a freshman in college, and then a 13-year-old who we're planning for as well, and she is going into the 8th grade. And so anybody who has kids knows you need to have that 529 plan. So that's on the personal front. On the career front, business continues to expand for Earl and myself. My husband, Earl, who's the co-owner of our business, and we both love promoting financial education and financial literacy. So it's been an exciting time for us. We're looking forward to big things in 2019 and beyond.
Okay, so I'm not going to go put on my grown zone hat, but there's a difference between, I tell people, being a couple and being a team.
That's right.
And it's a wonderful thing where you're part of a team, especially in your marriage. So props to Earl. One of the things that's always made me a big fan of yours is that you've really been a straight talker your whole career about the financial impact or the financial choices that impact on your life choices and vice versa. You've always been very direct about making that connection. Talk to me about that approach that you've kind of always, which is kind of key to your brand, frankly, as a money maven, to recognize the connection between the choices that you make with your money and the impact on your life and your health and your relationships.
Right. I guess one of the things for me is that I realized fairly early on that if you did things wrong, if you made mistakes, certainly the things that you did right, those things could be instructive to others. So I think all too often we hear financial experts and they'll tell you all the good side, all the things that they did right, the deals that they, consummated, the money that they made, the endorsements, and keep going on, the speaking gigs, so forth and so on. But then they don't want to tell you the bad side. And so I think that probably for me, what happened was early on, you mentioned my book, Zero Debt, which is a New York Times bestseller. We've gone into the 3rd edition of that book. Early on, I said, I'm just going to put it out there and I'm just going to be real about my mistakes and the stuff that I did wrong. And so I kind of fessed up. And this was way back in 2003. This was way before this huge era of social media sharing that we have. But I pretty much said, listen, I had $100,000 in credit card debt, and don't judge me, anybody out there looking and listening. But I said, here's how I got into the debt, and this is what I did to get out of it. And so I explained that I took 3 years to pay it off. I never missed any payments. I outlined the strategies that I did to become debt free. And I think that resonated with people because they were like, okay, she's gonna keep it real. She's not gonna, talk like her stuff don't stink and there's no problems and it's all sunshine and roses. And because life is not like that. It's messy. We get into problem situations. We have setbacks and challenges. And so for me, as I've built my brand over time, I've come to realize that it's actually more helpful to people when they can learn and share based on real life personal experiences. So I just believe in sharing the good and the bad.
So speaking of real life personal experiences, and we both have been there, a couple says, oh, we're in love and we're ready to make that big move, whether that big move is moving in together, marriage, maybe even parenthood. But there's some things that people tend to avoid when you talk about romance and finance that often comes back to haunt them later on and hurts financially and hurts the relationship. So let's talk about what are the key conversations that need to happen. If we had to think of a topic that really needs to be addressed before someone commits in that way in a relationship, what would you start with?
Well, I think that exploring financial intimacy goes way deeper than most people initially anticipate. Sometimes people think that being financially intimate with your partner means understanding how much they make, what their income is, do they get a bonus, and that kind of thing. And certainly those are factors, that's information that you'd want to know if you were going to marry somebody or potentially live with that person. But it goes way deeper than that. One of the first questions that I tell people that they should ask someone that they're considering entering into a very serious relationship with is, how was money handled in your household when you grew up? And that can actually teach you a lot about a person, because it could tell you about whether or not they may have certain expectations for how money is going to be handled in your relationship. It doesn't always work that way. But for example, if somebody says, in my household, my dad handled all the finances, or my mom handled all the finances, this parent did everything. Well, then you need to probably follow up with your partner and ask them, how did that work? Were there money arguments in the house? Was it effective? Is your expectation to do the exact same that your parents or what you saw outlined in your household? Because that person's expectations, their experiences, and what they've lived really up until that point may or may not mesh with your own upbringing and what your expectations are.
And your goals for the future, whether together or individually.
Absolutely.
So listen, we want to give you a chance to digest some of that, get the courage to have that conversation, because people avoid it, especially if they're emotionally involved. And then we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back with more from Lynnette Khalfani-Cox. Welcome back to Your Money, Your Life. I'm your host, Alfred Edmond Jr., with the Money Coach, Lynnette Khalfani-Cox. Lynnette, talk about at least one or two other things that people need to address before they make that romance and financial commitment of cohabitation, marriage, or other real financial commitment in a love relationship.
I also think that if somebody is very serious about entering into a relationship with their significant other, they have to discuss credit and debt issues.
Yes.
I believe personally in exchanging credit reports and sitting down and reviewing them together. Now, I know some people might be like, whoa, now you crossing the line here. This is a little extra. Well, if you're going to lay down with somebody,
yes,
if you're going to potentially walk down the aisle with somebody, it's a red flag to me. It's a telltale sign. If someone's not willing to financially entrust you with their private information, why would they sleep with you? Why would they consider, tying the knot and establishing a legal bond with you? Why would they consider perhaps having kids with you in the future? And you might just not be ready if you're not willing to do the hard work, which
Absolutely.
is communication, which is a core aspect of having any healthy relationship. If they're not willing to talk to you about that, you have to question the solidity and the basis for that relationship. So I definitely believe in sitting down together and reviewing the credit report. It's also going to show you obviously debts that they have. And again, that's a key question that people should be asking. What debts do you owe? It's not terribly invasive if you've gotten to the point where perhaps you're considering marriage or you're going to live together, because you may have financial accounts together. That's a whole nother question, yes, separate or joint. But at the very least, you should know, do they have a big car payment? Do they have massive credit card debt? Do they have any student loan obligations? All of that matters, because if you're going to build a future together, will you have a mortgage together and buy a home down the road? Those obligations can either prevent you from getting that home or that mortgage you might want, or it can help you in some cases. If you see the person has a very healthy credit rating, their debt to income ratio is, in line with what it should be, that's a positive factor.
So one of the things that we I stress as a editor of Black Enterprise, but also I do relationship education with my wife, Zara Green, is that people need to remember that marriage in particular, sometimes it's true with cohabitation too, but definitely with marriage, is not just an emotional and spiritual contract. It is a legal contract. It's why you have to go to the court to get out of it, not go to church to get out of it, even though you may have been married in the church. So his or her debts could become your debts. His or her tax obligation, unless you have a plan for it in advance. So this conversation is so important to have. And you're right, it is a red flag if you can't have that conversation. It's a sign of other potential trust issues in the relationship.
And for me, what I've found is that a lot of people resist having some of those salient and very necessary money conversations because they say, purportedly, that it reduces the relationship to a business transaction. And nothing could be further from the truth. That's actually not correct. First of all, you have to understand that if you're going to enter into a cohabitation situation or marriage, you're already entering some kind of a quote unquote business transaction. It doesn't mean that the entire relationship is reduced to that. It just means that that's one aspect of it. And any smart business person will tell you a couple things. One, get it in writing. Like that's just smart business. You don't just do a verbal or a handshake deal.
Or a kiss.
Or kiss, as the case may be, yeah, which could, later become slap,
Right.
It's a kiss now, but maybe if something goes wrong in the relationship or if anything heads south, you need to understand what the ramifications are. I encourage couples nowadays to think about prenuptial agreements, or even if you aren't headed for marriage and the altar, there's things called a living together agreement. Yes. And I think that those are very important to have because essentially it says, what did you come into the relationship with? If something goes wrong, who keeps the pets? Who keeps this, dishware, or, who has the obligation to pay off this or that obligation? It really does help you. And again, I know from firsthand experience, I'm very, very happily married now, second time around with my husband, Earl, but I was previously married for 13 years with my ex. It didn't work out, obviously. But in that relationship, I was the breadwinner. My ex was a student for the duration of our marriage. We were married for 13 years, and he actually had a very long, extended period in graduate school earning his PhD. Long story short, what I'm saying is that when we divorced, I was the one paying. I was the one who paid alimony. I was the one who paid child support, a lot of child support and a lot of alimony. We had joint custody of our two kids, but I was shelling out many thousands of dollars per month, at one point over $6,500 a month. So ladies in particular, you need to understand, sometimes people have a misconception. They think that because I'm the woman or I'm the mom, the alimony is going to go that way. Well, not necessarily, because high earning women in particular are potentially vulnerable, not in the sense of being taken advantage of or anything like that. And I'm not suggesting that was the case for me. But what I'm saying is that when I initially got married at like 22 and then divorced later at, 35, it wasn't even on my radar to think about a prenup, because I was at that point where I was like, I don't have anything. I'm just getting out. I got out of college and there wasn't anything there. Right. But that's precisely the wrong thing. You need to think 10, 15, 20 years in the future. Yeah, even if you don't have anything right now, you probably will in the future, and that's when it's going to count.
And even if you don't have a prenup, you got to at least have the conversation about money. I mean, it starts with that conversation. And we can do a whole other show about blended families and second marriages, et cetera, et cetera. Listen, Lynnette, thank you so much for being a guest on the show and for all the great things you're doing to increase the financial education and the financial wellness of just people all around the country and all across the world. You can get more insights to improve your financial wellness from Lynnette Khalfani-Cox at askthemoneycoach.com. And you can really get serious about your own financial education at moneycoachuniversity.com. Check out the podcast channel at blackenterprise.com to find Your Money, Your Life, and other podcasts from Black Enterprise editors, writers, and experts. And be sure to subscribe to Your Money, Your Life from any podcast directory, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher. And if you like what you hear, please leave a 5-star review. We know you like what you hear, so just come on, give it up. This is Alfred Edmond Jr. with Your Money, Your Life from blackenterprise.com. Thanks for listening. Be sure to listen to every edition of Your Money, Your Life and stay focused on your financial wellness.